In the early 1600s, two men pointed telescopes at the moon. They saw the same surface, the same shadows, the same strange dark patches. But only one of them changed the history of science forever. Why? Because he was also an artist. In the early 17th century, a revolutionary invention began transforming how humans saw the universe: the telescope. In Italy, Galileo Galilei was carefully observing the heavens. In England, Thomas Harriot was doing the same. Both men turned their telescopes toward the moon. Both saw something unusual. But only one understood what it truly meant. When they observed the moon, they noticed it wasn't evenly bright. It had patches of light and dark, irregular shapes, shifting shadows. Harriot described it as strange spottedness. He recorded what he saw, but he didn't go much further. Galileo did. And the difference wasn't better eyesight. It was better interpretation. Before Galileo became famous as an astronomer, he studied and taught drawing. He was trained in perspective. He mastered a technique called chiaroscuro, the use of light and shadow to create depth on a flat surface. He even studied and taught at the Accademia del Disegno in Florence. This artistic training changed everything. Galileo understood how light falls on uneven surfaces. He knew how shadows reveal height and depth. He knew that when sunlight hits mountains, valleys, and craters, shadows form in predictable ways. So when he looked at the moon and saw bright and dark regions, he didn't see random spots. He saw mountains. He saw valleys. He saw craters. One area fascinated him most: the line dividing light and darkness on the moon. Astronomers call it the terminator. Near this boundary, shadows stretch dramatically. Galileo realized something extraordinary. The bright points near the dark edge were mountain peaks catching sunlight. The dark areas were valleys still trapped in shadow. This meant one shocking thing. The moon was not smooth. It was rough. It had terrain. Just like Earth. This discovery was explosive, not because of science alone, but because of belief. For centuries, Europeans believed the heavens were perfect. Celestial bodies were thought to be flawless, smooth, divine spheres, completely different from imperfect Earth. In Christian symbolism, the spotless moon even represented purity, especially the Virgin Mary. But Galileo's observations shattered that idea. The moon wasn't perfect. It was scarred, rugged, physical. He had quietly broken the myth of heavenly perfection. In 1609, Galileo published his discoveries in a small but powerful book called Sidereus Nuncius, meaning the starry messenger. Inside were detailed sketches of the moon. These weren't rough drawings. They were precise, artistic, carefully shaded to show depth. They were scientific evidence, and works of art. The world took notice. Artists across Europe stopped painting the moon as a smooth glowing disk. The Galilean moon, textured and cratered, replaced the old idealized image. Interestingly, Galileo wasn't punished for this discovery. The real conflict came later, when he supported heliocentrism, the idea that Earth moves around the sun. That challenge to church doctrine would bring him before the Inquisition. But the rough moon? That idea quietly reshaped how people imagined the universe. In 1635, a famous portrait of Galileo was painted by Justus Sustermans. The portrait now hangs in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. It shows a serious, thoughtful man. A scientist. But also an artist. And that combination is what made the difference. Here's what makes this story powerful. Both Galileo and Harriot looked at the same moon. Through similar telescopes. At the same time in history. But only Galileo made the leap. Why? Because knowledge isn't just about seeing. It's about understanding what you see. Galileo's artistic training allowed him to recognize how light and shadow reveal shape. His science gave him curiosity. His art gave him insight. Together, they transformed astronomy forever. The next time you look at the moon, remember this. What changed history wasn't just a telescope. It was perspective. Sometimes, the greatest discoveries happen not when we see something new, but when we learn to see differently. If you enjoyed this story of art and science colliding, like the video and subscribe for more hidden stories from history.